Hi there, traders. This is Brad Gilbert with the FX Market Insight for Wednesday, the 1st of May. All right, now as we enter the Asian session here for the first, now there's not a hell of a lot going on. Of course, we are in the third day of Golden Week in Japan. So once again, with that Japanese liquidity out of the market, should be a pretty quiet Asian session, I would expect, especially after we've already had the Kiwi employment numbers, which were, the unemployment rate was as expected, but there was a bit of a drop-off in jobs growth, led to a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction on the downside in the Kiwi, but that's about it. Now, let's just have a look at the today's market conditions. Well, this is what happens, especially with the Fed meeting, right? We've got the FOMC meeting, no change in rates expected, no change in the statement, and the market's just waiting to see if Jerome Powell sticks to his guns in the press conference. So as that usually happens, it can really diffuse the market. And that's what we've seen at the moment. And the majors are now drifting back into the range and just trading sideways, most of them. The core market drivers, well, simmering in the background. We've got Brexit and, of course, this China-US relations. Now, they are getting together this week. I did see something on the news service there talking about they are hoping to sort out some major things this week. Now, you just come back up, just scroll up just a touch to the technical outlook. Now, as I said, the majors drifting sideways. Well, yep, you know what? The situation is they're pretty much all just trading sideways. Dollar Swiss is hanging on to its gains. It hasn't really drifted lower. It is trading sideways at the moment, but it's still above all those levels. And the Kiwi, with those weaker employment numbers, has had another knee-jerk reaction to the downside, and it does keep pressure on the RBNZ to potentially cut rates sooner than later. So when you come into the data, right, so we've got a situation here where the Federal Reserve meeting, it's not like everything else, right? This is the epicenter. I'm talking about down here, the federal funds rate and the statement and the press conference. This is not a normal event. It's the epicenter of all financial markets, right? The US economy being the biggest and the most dominant. It's very important because the US dollar is the backbone to all the major pairs up here. So we need to know what's going on there. Now, I suspect we won't see any changes, but we have to get through this before we see what happens. So UK manufacturing coming out early Europe, is that going to impact? Probably not. I saw sterling had a massive rally. I just assumed it was on the back of some positive sort of Brexit stuff. Then you got the ADP non-employment change. This is like, as I said, a different statistic than the NFP data. Tries to sort of give you a prediction on that, but with it being so close, and the ISM manufacturing as well, for that matter, being so close to the Fed, I think these events will be somewhat overlooked as we cruise towards that release. And that's pretty much all we've got. So with the market focusing very clearly on the Fed, I don't expect a hell of a lot of movement across the currencies. And that's pretty much what we saw yesterday on the major pairs. Now, I've left my trend lines where they were just to show you what's going on. So you've got the Aussie, downtrend, trading sideways as it lacks momentum and just trading straight through that previous resistance line, not really going anywhere. There was enough positive data out of Europe yesterday to give it a slight boost, take out the stops just above 112. But once again, it's not really going anywhere just yet until we find out what the Fed are talking about. Brexit kicking into gear with sterling. I mean, it's anyone's guess. Here's the Kiwi, pretty much trading the same as the Aussie. Came back and was testing that, hit that new or previous sort of resistance line at around 66.80. The employment numbers the growth numbers weaker, and that's pushed the Kiwi lower. Dollar yen, well, not a hell of a lot going on. If anything, the pressures around this US-China talks, Chinese growth numbers yesterday, manufacturing numbers, etc., were a little bit off the mark. So it's really hard to call what the hell is going on in dollar yen. It's just going through cycles of a slight up move, slight down move, and it's not really going far in between. Dollar CAD, a real tricky one. The weaker GDP numbers not really coming into play. Dollar CAD sort of getting slammed on the downside there. So once again, to me, I was saying this yesterday, dollar CAD to me is a bit of a real question over what the hell is going on with that currency. There's too many things pulling it from one side to the other. It is having a few sporadic moves, but it is very hard to trade. And if I just blow that up, just to give you a bit of a look here at the price action, by no means is it easy, right? So you've got this breakdown here, down through the trend line, sort of 15 points through, back up 70 points, and then lower. This is carnage. And when you see situations like that, regardless of what's coming out, just stay out of the way because it is a mess, right? And if you can't identify what the majority of the market's doing, well, then we stay out of that opportunity. All right, that's pretty much it, guys. There's not a hell of a lot to get yourself confused with. What we need to do is focus on the fact that, with the major pairs, they are drifting sideways. Okay, sure, you've got a couple of pairs over here to look at, but there's no major data coming out in Asia. The manufacturing numbers in the UK for the European session, the only real major release. Will that impact? I don't think so. So it's going to come down to the Federal Reserve meeting. The rate, no change in rates expected, no change in statement expected. We're just probably looking for the press conference. And that, if it's completely neutral, well, then unfortunately, we've got to hit a phase where that momentum we had for the last week or so has really diffused the dollar. And that's really taken out the emphasis on direction technically on these major pairs. Of course, the fundamental outlook remains the same. But you know what? That doesn't do a hell of a lot for us. We need both of these things to be working together. All right, guys, that's the FX Market Insight from me. Have a good trade day. Don't forget, jump in the 247 trade zone if you've got a question or if you're trying to share trade ideas, etc. It's a great place to do that. All right, guys, we'll catch you later on. Cheerio.